Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, I invite you to go beyond the headlines, beyond the fire and smoke, beyond fear. I want you to look deeper, into the moment when one missile changed everything, not just for a nation, but for the entire world. You see, there are moments in history where the world doesn't shift slowly. It jumps, and one of those moments came when Iran launched a missile, not just into a target, but into the psyche of global power dynamics. This wasn't just a military move, it was a message, a statement, a declaration that we are not invisible, we are not weak, we will be heard. That missile, launched with precision, echoed far beyond the desert it crossed. It thundered across boardrooms, war rooms, and newsrooms. It told the world, power is no longer only where you expect it to be. And let's be clear, I'm not here to glorify war. I'm here to show you how perception creates power. Because Iran, long marginalized, sanctioned, spoken over, used that moment to say, we are players in this game and we can rewrite the rules. It wasn't about destruction, it was about disruption. That missile disrupted the narrative that only the so-called superpowers hold the pen to write history. It reminded us, dignity, resilience, and strategy. Those are the weapons no one sees coming. So what made Iran a superpower in that moment? Not the missile itself, but the message behind it. The courage to launch it, knowing the risks. The discipline to control it, knowing the cost. The vision to use it, knowing it would change everything. Let this be a lesson to the world, and to each one of us. Sometimes all it takes is one bold move, one act of defiance, one stand in the name of self-respect, to make the world look at you differently. Because real power, it's not just in might. It's in the meaning behind the move. In global affairs, there are rare moments when a single act, one decision, or one launch becomes a definitive turning point. A moment when the perception of a nation changes overnight. For Iran, that turning point came in the form of one missile. This wasn't just a projectile hurtling through the skies. It was a calculated gesture, a moment of assertion that transformed Iran's image from a sanctioned state on the fringes to a country capable of commanding the world's attention in a single breath. The missile didn't just hit a target. It hit the world stage, and its reverberations reached far beyond its physical impact zone. When Iran launched that missile, it disrupted a carefully constructed global narrative. For decades, Iran had been painted into a corner, ostracized by Western powers, its voice drowned in the chorus of international condemnation. Sanctions had been imposed, isolation had been weaponized, and the assumption was that Iran would remain reactive, not proactive. But that single missile told a different story. It showed a country that had studied its opponents, sharpened its tools, and was now ready to act with precision, not panic. The world took notice, not because of the damage caused, but because of the timing, confidence, and clarity of the strike. This act wasn't reckless, it was deliberate. And in that deliberation, Iran signaled that it would no longer accept a passive role in the global script. The missile was a message wrapped in metal and fire. We decide how we respond. We choose when to speak. Suddenly, a country thought to be contained revealed it could reach across borders with technological sophistication and strategic intelligence. It's important to understand that this wasn't just about military might. It was psychological warfare. The goal wasn't only to strike a target. It was to trigger reflection in the minds of military leaders, diplomats, and citizens across the globe. Iran showed it had not only the tools of war, but the understanding of narrative. In a world governed by perception that matters just as much as raw force, it's about saying, we can hit you, and we know exactly where and when to do it. And more importantly, we know why we're doing it. The symbolism of that missile cannot be overstated. It didn't just fly through air, it shattered assumptions. Suddenly, Western analysts weren't discussing if Iran could strike, but how precise, how fast, and how bold it could be. That's the hallmark of a turning point. That's the moment power begins to shift, not necessarily on the battlefield, but in boardrooms, news studios, and diplomatic summits. It also revealed something essential about modern power, that in today's world, dominance isn't just defined by the number of warships you own or the size of your economy. It's defined by your ability to control the moment. Iran controlled that moment. It chose the terrain, the terms, and the tone. That is the essence of psychological leverage. This was not the act of a rogue player. It was the move of a nation that had waited, watched, and prepared to show that it could not be dismissed. And once the world saw that missile fly, the conversation changed. Iran was no longer framed solely as a threat. It was recognized, however controversially, as a strategic force capable of shaping outcomes. One missile, one moment, turning the page of history with sound, fire, and unmistakable intent. When Iran launched that single missile, it wasn't merely firing a piece of military hardware, it was transmitting a powerful message to the entire world. That missile became a language, a form of expression, and an assertion of sovereignty. In global politics, symbolism can often carry more weight than destruction. And in this case, the missile served as a signal not just of capability, but of resolve. It told the world, we are here, we are ready, and we will not be sidelined. At that moment, Iran reframed itself from being seen as a reactive nation to being recognized as a deliberate actor on the international stage. The launch was not random or impulsive. It was crafted with precision, aimed to achieve psychological impact more than physical ruin. That's what made it powerful. It wasn't just about striking a target. It was about striking a chord, shifting the atmosphere, and forcing the world to stop and pay attention. And it worked. This missile carried with it years, decades of frustration, of being demonized, sanctioned, and ignored. But instead of crying out, Iran responded with silence, calculation, and a single, resounding act. The message was clear. Iran could defend itself. It could retaliate. And more importantly, it could choose when and how to do so. In a world where unpredictability often dominates, Iran showed discipline, a mastery of restraint until the exact moment when it wanted to speak. And when it did speak, it didn't need words. Military analysts around the world watched in stunned silence. They realized that this was no symbolic threat, no empty gesture. The accuracy of the strike, the confidence in its timing, and the absence of chaos afterward revealed something deeper. Iran wasn't bluffing. The missile wasn't just a weapon. It was a message of maturity. It showed a country that wasn't acting out of desperation, but from a place of strategic awareness and growing influence. That missile didn't beg for recognition. It demanded it. It didn't plead for a seat at the table. It declared that Iran had already claimed it. In an era where countries often rely on alliances, coalitions, and public relations to project power, Iran used a far older tool, action. And yet, the genius was in the restraint. The strike was precise, limited, and avoided full escalation. That choice, that balance, was the real message. Power today is not always about how loudly you shout, but about how clearly you are heard when you finally choose to speak. Iran's missile said everything that long-winded speeches and diplomatic protests couldn't. It carried the message of national pride, strategic control, and a refusal to be silenced. The world got the message, and it was delivered in real time, live, unavoidable. It's also worth considering the audience of this message. It wasn't just meant for the adversaries. It was meant for allies, for neighbors, for the Iranian people themselves. It said, "We will not fold. We will not be intimidated. We have the tools, the will, and the discipline to act on our